Welcome to Stress Mess, a stressless podcast where the chaos is real, the caffeine is strong, and swearing sometimes happens, and that's okay. I'm Samantha Elizabeth, health and wellness coach, chronic overthinker, and proud BFFs to stress itself. Here we're ditching perfection, embracing unfiltered real talk, and making mindset shifts that might just keep us from screaming into the void. Let's get messy. Today's episode is a real one. We're talking about what happens when a relationship ends, and not just the breakup itself, but everything that comes after. That moment where your life doesn't look the way you thought it would, and you're kind of left sitting there thinking, okay, now what? I'm joined by Amanda Warlick, a certified divorce coach who helps people build resiliency during some of the most difficult transitions in life. And while we do talk about divorce, this conversation goes way beyond that. We get into identity, nervous system overload, rebuilding your life, and what it actually looks like to figure yourself out again when everything feels a little untethered. This one is honest, it's a little uncomfortable at times, and it's also really grounding. Let's get into it. Hi, Amanda. Well, welcome to the podcast. And let me go ahead and let you introduce yourself, and then let's get into the meaty topic that we have on board for today.
Okay. Well, I'm Amanda Warlick, and I'm a certified divorce coach, and I help people build resiliency when they're going through difficult challenges.
Wow, that is pretty heavy. And I know that the topic we're going to talk about, obviously let's keep it light, but it is a pretty heavy topic, divorce. It's, the opposite, I suppose, of, falling in love and, going through, all of the things that build towards hoping to create a lasting relationship, and then when it isn't a lasting relationship and you realize that you might have to break those vows that you once said to the other person, that's pretty heavy. So you did mention before that divorce is probably the second stressful event, in somebody's life.
It is rated as the second most stressful event that someone can go through. And the first stressful is the death of a spouse. And what I think a lot of people don't think about when they're getting divorced is that it is a death of what you had dreamed of and what you had hoped to accomplish. Because you do set out on your wedding day with all these big hopes and dreams and, maybe have children and do the traveling and all the fun things. And marriage is hard. It's got to take both people to give what they can give. But nobody plans for a divorce. Nobody sets out in life and says, I'm going to get divorced.
Yeah. There was that joke I do remember before I got married for the first time. And that was, he looks like my, first ex-husband or something like that. Like, talking about seeing a guy, or maybe a guy seeing a girl and saying, oh, she looks like my first ex-wife, not to say that because people were like, wait, you're not married. Oh, like, no, I bet,
Right.
That kind of whole joke. Because nobody does set out to do that. That's the reason why at a wedding, you say your vows with such heart, because they're coming from your heart. They're coming from the promise. And things have changed, because it used to be that people didn't get a divorce, but there were so many social and law, written about divorce, that. And I was just actually watching a show. It came out about 10 years ago, but it's 11/23, 1963 or something like that. It's a movie with James Franco, and he goes back in time to the 63, but I think it starts off in the 60s, where he starts and he goes back in time and kind of sees how life was lived then. And one of the things back then in the 60s is that a woman could ask for a divorce, but the man could not grant it, at the time.
Yep.
And I think that a lot of people that were married, before that time and are still married to this day, because there's also that, not only that law, but then there's also the societal type of expectations on a marriage.
Yeah, I think that, I somewhere in the 70s, a woman wasn't even allowed to have her own banking account.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there was definitely a lot of change that has happened in the past 50 years. And there probably are people who stayed married because of those things. But I like to think that there are people who actually stayed married because it was a good marriage too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. If I look at my aunt and my uncle now, my
Mhm.
aunt just passed a couple of years ago, my uncle several years before that. But if you look at videos of them and pictures of them, and
Mhm.
um, I'm pretty sure what happened is that they met, and within 48 hours they went out and eloped. They just knew it. Like,
They
it
do.
was
Yeah.
that 48 hours. It wasn't even love at first sight. It's just that 48 hours of getting to know each other and realizing that you're the person that I actually want to spend the rest of my life with.
Mhm.
And that's pretty powerful if you think about it. Because
Yeah.
have you ever looked at somebody that you've known for 48 hours and said, yep?
I don't think so. I can't speak to that. So,
No, and that's a lasting love. And you
yep.
see it, I mean, because when my aunt was passing a couple of years ago, me and my cousins were all around reading their love letters to each other.
Mm,
One of the things my uncle used to do is that he would work late. And when he would work late, he would always write a letter. So that way he brought something home to his wife. And it was always a letter about what was happening at work, and, how much he couldn't wait to see her. This is like, working
mhm.
late until like 6 or 7 o'clock at night, and coming home,
Yep.
and maybe have missed dinner with everybody. But that was something that she could keep, during that
Mhm.
time that he was still, even when he was at work, thinking about her.
Mhm.
Now, I mean, nowadays you can't even get like a 15-second text from a guy, like, here's
Yeah.
my uncle, right? Right? Like a 3 or 4 page letter, you
Right.
know.
Right.
Um, but I mean, those are the kind of differences or stark differences, that we see in romanticizing relationships,
Mm. Mhm.
comparatively to then, to now. And
Mhm.
seeing kind of a huge difference in society, of course, because, as I mentioned, the law. But I do want to find out a little bit more, though, of what is your experience, on kind of, how what our minds go through, what our bodies go through in
Yeah.
divorce.
Yeah. So, divorce is mind, body, your whole nervous system goes into fight, flight, or freeze mode.
Yeah.
And so when people are in divorce, it is changing everything that they had once thought
Mm.
was their normal. And divorce tends to, going back to it being the second most stressful, second to only the death of a spouse,
Mm.
you you're ripping a fabric in a household in two, basically.
Yeah.
And you are now trying to figure out what is it that life is going to be now,
Mm.
because your norm is not the norm anymore. And you find, or I have found clients who don't even know what they like anymore,
Yeah.
because in the marriage they've, decided that, well, I'm not going to buy green beans, for example, because they don't like green beans. And so we're just not going to have green beans anymore.
Yeah.
In I personally went through a high conflict divorce and custody
Mm.
battle myself. And I
Mm.
remember standing in the grocery store thinking, I don't have to buy the food that he likes. I can now buy the food that I like. And it sounds like such a small, silly event, but it's that rebuilding of, well, who am I now?
Yeah.
Because I'm not somebody's wife anymore. I was still somebody's mother,
Hmm.
but I wasn't somebody's wife, and I had to figure out, well, what do I look like now?
Yeah, that's very true, because I always say like a good relationship
Hmm.
is that, and now I'm going to explain this a little bit further, but a good relationship is one that you love what the other person loves. Maybe you hate what the other person hates, although my dad will always lecture and say there is no hate unless it's a football team. You can hate the other football team, but you can't hate, like there should be no hate. And what I mean by that is that it doesn't mean that like, and I was talking to somebody about this, like if they love yoga, that you have to love yoga and you're into yoga too, that
Right.
sort of thing. But you're not yucking their yum.
Right.
And, you are fully supporting them. And sometimes, that also means that you get involved in things. I had,
Hmm.
an ex, and, he was really big into cycling. And
Hmm.
I'm not a fan of it at all.
Hmm.
Um, yes, I wanted to try that, with him. I just realized it wasn't for me. So what am I going to do as a supportive significant other? And that is that I'm going to fully support, like absolutely go out for rides,
Right.
absolutely, join all the cycling clubs and, things
Hmm.
like that. You're going to be doing a fundraiser for it. I'm there. I'm going to be
Right.
helping you fundraise, all of that kind of stuff. It's that those are the important things that if it's okay if you're not totally involved in it, but you're supporting, at that
Right.
time. But that
Right.
also means too that that becomes almost a part of your identity if you dive into it as well. And like when you have a relationship that ends, that also means that that part of you in not only the relationship, but that whatever you had, taken on in support, of your significant other also kind of dies too.
Hmm. It does. And it opens up a new space
Hmm.
that is not there for you to figure out what you want to do.
Yeah.
And it's hard figuring that out when
Yeah.
you've been with somebody. I mean, my marriage was 17 years. We were together 20 years and trying to figure out, what things I liked again and was now able to do. Um, really, it was almost like a rebirth of a person.
Yeah. How did you go about doing that for yourself?
Well, I did counseling. I think everyone should definitely have a therapist during a divorce. Coaching definitely does not take the place of a therapist.
Mm.
Um, I took time and really just tried new things, and I would set a date with myself and I would go out to dinner. And I would watch a TV show, and sit at the bar and eat.
Mm.
But it was a way for me to like get out and start figuring that out. I had a great support system of friends.
Mm.
Um, and of course, having my kids, that allowed me to try new things with them too and to see what they like to do and kind of figure that out from there.
Yeah, definitely. That I think that's the somewhat of the uncomfortable part for a lot of people, that they're used to having somebody there if that person supports them, in what they're
Hmm.
doing, but having somebody there, to kind of cheer them on, hopefully. Obviously, if they're getting divorced, maybe that person did not cheer them on as much, but
Right.
to be there, to have somebody supportive and then all of a sudden to go to events alone,
Right.
and I know for me, like when I started going to events alone, with mutual friends, I kind of was treated like a leper, like there was
Yeah.
something wrong with me. Now that I was not with my other person,
Hmm.
it's just like a little cautious, like, of me. And it felt very odd, because I'm like, I'm still the same person,
Right.
like, just because I don't have that person right next to me doesn't
Hmm.
mean that I'm not me, anymore. So
Right.
that's hard for a lot of people, right?
It is. And I think that a lot of times people aren't necessarily comfortable with themselves
Mm.
before they get married, and they don't have the autonomy of being okay by themselves. I
Yeah.
know I didn't. And having to really spend, because then now you only have the kids 50% of the time. So,
Yeah.
now I'm by myself. And so really liking who you are
Yeah.
and falling in love with the person that you are and what you enjoy, and not being compromised on that, and figuring out what your value system is, because maybe your value system didn't match with your former spouse,
Mm-hmm.
and that was an area of contention. And so understanding that, hey, I get to have my values, and I get to, speak my mind on certain topics, and be safe, and do it in with new relationships, and building off of, this new person.
Yeah, absolutely. And you do see it a lot, when people get a divorce and even after a long period of time of being with somebody, they might jump to one other person rather than taking the time to
Yes.
heal, and to be comfortable by themselves and make
Hmm.
themselves, as they say, that, when divorce happens, it's a wound, that
Hmm.
gets opened up. And, if you jump into another relationship right away, you're bleeding all over that other person,
Hmm.
constantly. And you need to take some time to heal, and I
Yes.
know there was also, like, other advice, out there is that, um, I'm not going to say for male or female or,
Hmm.
whatever gender you identify with, that there was that rule of, that this is what I heard. A man needs to be divorced for at least a year before he could consider, a relationship, or at least a woman
Hmm.
should make sure a man is divorced at least a year, before they should consider, and
Yeah.
um, that's
That,
yeah,
yeah. I think that would
different.
be a really interesting study to see, who didn't wait and who did wait and went into second marriages, and what the longevity of that second marriage is.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
definitely.
and I think that there are just some people who are um, insecure and do feel like they need to have somebody there.
Yep.
And I think that people who can become really successful in life after the trauma of a divorce,
Hmm.
are the people who rebuild themselves first.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, definitely. And I'm going to be, completely transparent too, that, I was always a serial relationship person,
Hmm.
going, from, serious relationship to serious relationship, and not a lot of, time, in between for me to rediscover myself, as, I am.
Hmm.
I think that, like, it might have been months, and then I was in another relationship, and then that one got serious, and, then it continued on until it wasn't, and
Hmm.
so, um, this is, I mean, this is the first time in my life that I'm without a relationship. And, I took the time, to heal. And it was one of those things, yes, I got, date offers, but I was like, I'm not,
Hmm.
I'm not dating at all, because I
Right.
really I want to heal in order to be able to be myself again, to rediscover
Hmm.
fully myself, but then also to make sure that I'm okay for who I want to be my life partner,
Right.
and I want to be able to fully heal for that person. So I am not bleeding on them.
Right.
So I'm not bringing all my, old baggage. Everybody's going to have baggage, but,
Hmm.
like that, I'm not bringing the big baggage, into a relationship. And I
Right.
think that is hard for people to be alone, because they feel like they need somebody or want somebody, all the time. And yeah,
Hmm.
I mean, sometimes it gets uncomfortable for me, because like I'll go to events and I'm like, I really wish I could bring somebody, to
Hmm.
this event, I really wish that I had a significant other. And,
Right.
I have really good friends and they all have wonderful relationships, with their spouses. And I love that, their love for each other. I'm a little
Mhm.
envious of it, of course.
Mhm. Right.
Um, but, I also realize that the journey I'm on, of course, is different than their journey.
Right. And I think the comparison, people compare themselves all the time to others, which
Mm,
does a disservice
yeah.
to the uniqueness of each individual.
Yeah.
And we need to be able to, um, you know, take out the shoulda, woulda, couldas in our
Yes.
lives.
Yeah.
I say to clients, don't should on yourself because it becomes very messy.
Yes.
So if we remove those words and we, look at it as an opportunity
Yeah.
of what we get to do versus a problem or something that needs to be fixed, that
Mhm.
it's an opportunity to heal. It's not that you're just because your marriage didn't last, it doesn't mean that you are a bad person. Doesn't mean
Yeah.
that you're a failure. It means that this is an opportunity to learn and grow. And
Yes.
when you look at it that way, it just shifts the paradigm so much
Mhm.
that allows a person to go to take a deep breath and relax and sit in it. And
Mhm.
I think in our society, we're a microwave society. If we
Yep.
cannot have it instantaneously and it is not perfect, then we don't want it.
Yep.
And, you know, relationships aren't that way. Life isn't that way. We have to take the time and we sometimes have to take a couple steps back and think about how this is furthering our growth as a person or how is it hindering us.
Very true. Very true. So, what would you say are the steps that somebody should take? Let's just say, obviously, they're going through a divorce,
Mhm.
and what are some healthy steps that they can do to be able to get through that divorce? And let's go back to, for their body, for their mind, for
Yeah.
their environments, even.
Yeah. So I think first and foremost, a person needs to create a safe space for them,
Mm,
whether it's, if one person's staying in the marital home and the other person is moving out, whatever, they need to create that safe space for them to be who they need to be.
yeah.
And if there are children involved, to make sure that it's a safe space for going in between mom and dad.
Hmm.
Um, Next, I mean, exercise is always a great stress reliever. And, you know, I, funny story, I was started running again when my divorce started, but got so angry one day and tried not to be reactive that I tore a leg muscle on the treadmill because I
Oh
was
my.
running so hard. So
Oh,
exercise within, a, a safe manner, I
don't
should
push
say.
yourself. Yeah.
Don't push yourself.
Yeah.
Um, you know, for mental, I think that there's a lot of information about somatic practices out there. I
Mm.
think being able to, take a deep breath when you need to, um, figuring out emotionally what does trigger you
Mhm.
from the other person and kind of see that before it happens. And something very simple is to have canned responses because
Oh,
with it being people want to sometimes push you into, well, why haven't you answered my text within the past 5 minutes? It's setting that boundary and having a canned response of, I need to think about this. I'll get back to you as soon as I can,
yeah.
which then alleviates the pressure coming from another person. So, and I think being able um, to laugh
Mm.
during, I think, watching funny movies or, um, go to a comedy club sometimes just to laugh and forget about things for a while is always a good medicine to kind of alleviate things.
Yeah,
So
definitely. What
I don't
advice
know
would
if those,
Oh,
I don't know
sorry,
if
go
those were
ahead.
the steps you were looking for, but
No.
I think you just got to definitely start taking care of yourself.
Right. Yeah. I think anybody that's going through divorce will definitely look at those steps and, be able to take some to heart. I mean, some of them are good reminders,
Mhm.
for us in general, is don't forget to take time
Just
to laugh.
right.
I know I
I
have
mean,
a friend that checks in on me and is like, don't forget to take some time for yourself this week. And,
right,
don't, yeah, because it's all, I jokingly say, it's all work and no play,
right,
makes, Samantha a dull girl,
so,
but,
right. That's
but
right.
no, I mean, I do have fun in my work though, but I
Hmm.
think that's the thing is that it's the balance, it's
Yes,
that people need to take for themselves. I mean, it's good life, um, general advice, but that it's also, very good to focus, on in yourself. And of course, if kids are involved too,
hmm,
to take care of yourself so you can take care of them,
exactly,
better. Um,
right. And
there's, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say in with the divorce process, and of course, having a good attorney is always a wise thing to have as well.
Yep.
And they're going to need things from you. They're going to need documents from you, and it's going to
Hmm.
seem extremely overwhelming. And just take it bit by bit.
Yep.
Don't feel like you have to do it all at one time.
Yeah.
Schedule if it's 15 minutes, at a time to get that information to them, because it
Mhm.
can feel extremely overwhelming.
Yeah, definitely. And that is, something too that I think a lot of people don't realize that if you go through something like that,
Mhm.
um, after the fact, you realize of what you should have done or could have done, to prepare yourself for that. Because, sometimes there is some backtracking, on things to pull up some documents and do some
Mhm.
research and make sure you're fully prepared as well, for asset, splitting or,
Mhm.
if there might be an argument, it's too, for like who gets the majority of the custody,
Mhm. Oh, that's
because
a huge argument. Yeah.
yes, yeah. I mean, so that's, something too. But then also if you have
Furry.
pets,
Mhm.
like, that's another thing too. I mean, we see it, from Legally Blonde, the
Yes.
dog, was it her dog was Bruiser, but I can't remember the other dog's name that
Um,
she was going after.
I want to say it was like Max or something,
Yeah.
but yeah, the
Anyway,
bulldog. Yeah.
but yeah,
Yep.
there was that, that part, where there's a divorce and, there's might be other people involved, there might, oh, I mean, you think about it too, like other family members involved,
Mhm.
too, that there's that whole that I know my mother has told me this. She's losing a son-in-law, she's losing a son, is what she told me. And I'm like, I'm so
Mm,
sorry for you,
right.
like, but, those, sort of things of like,
Right.
that you've got all of the, well, I mean, of course, that's what marriage is, a blending of two families.
Yes.
And then part of what you create as your own family. And, that could involve children or pets or, even just a house that you made your home,
Mhm.
too. And all of those, kind of considerations.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what advice would you give to family members, I suppose, about somebody going through a divorce? Have you, do you coach people on that of how to set boundaries and, things like that?
Yes. So are you asking if family members are asking about the divorce, or um coaching like in-laws?
Well, I guess it's a little bit of both,
Okay.
So, let's just say you're somebody going through a divorce,
Mhm.
and you have people that might be a little bit nosy, about what's going on. Maybe it's family, maybe it is friends,
Mhm.
but it's like, what would you advise, somebody going through a divorce that kind of has people trying to get too involved? in the whole
So
process?
I think that's a difficult one for people because you want to feel their support, but also you can get burned by them as well in the
Yeah.
process. And it I think the best advice is if it's something that you don't want the party that you are divorcing to find out, then
Mm-hmm.
you should keep it to yourself.
Yeah.
And that's another great thing about divorce coaching is it is confidential.
Yep.
And so, I like to position myself as the sounding board and the thinking partner with people going through the
Mhm.
divorce because there are
Yeah.
so many different aspects. Um, and I know I got burnt in my divorce by people who I trusted with information.
Yeah.
And so it is difficult. And I think that it's also easy to, I just heard boundaries aren't for the other people, the boundaries are for yourself.
Mm.
And by putting a boundary in place for me, of saying to someone who was being overly nosy, of, you know what, I really appreciate your support, but I can't get into the details with you every time for
Mm.
my own mental health.
Yeah.
I need to be able, if there's something that I need your specific help with, I will definitely let you know.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate your help. And I can't keep going over this stuff over and over and over again with people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so it's okay to have that boundary, and it's okay that it is a personal thing that you want to keep some things to yourself.
Mm.
Um, people love information. They love to hear the tea. Um,
Yes.
but
Spill the tea.
spill the tea, but it's not for everybody to know.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, I think that your relationship in a lot of ways is fairly private. I know there might
Mhm.
be some things that you share with your girlfriends, but you don't share
Right.
everything,
No.
for sure, because that's between you two. But also, divorce can be very private too. Um,
Mhm.
let's just say if it's just, you two involved. I mean, obviously, with children, there's some um, intermixing, of, some, things that you do need to share, of course, with
Right.
that when you have other people involved. But a lot of times, divorce is private as well. And,
Mhm.
that's not something. What do you think? Let's talk about something that some people do. And it seems to be, I don't want to say it's a new trend, but, it's something, but people have divorce parties. And they might even have it with the person that they're divorcing. What do you think about that?
Um, I think they're interesting.
Mm,
Um, I maybe it was in a TV show or something where they were happily unmarried and she wore black and they said, I don't marry you and I don't marry you, like the end of their divorce. I think it can be a celebration for some people.
sure.
Um, and when I was going through my divorce, it did not feel like a celebration.
Mm,
Now looking back, it's been almost 8 years. It was the best thing that happened to me. And
yeah.
so I think if you want to go out with, your girlfriends, if it was, people celebrate all kinds of things. And
Yeah.
I don't think I did that.
Yeah.
But I think if that helps you get through and de-stress and start a new chapter, then go for it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And part of my breakup coaching, too, that I do with people is that there's also that, I mean, it could be, very joyous too, but sometimes the air gets let out of the tires a little bit, especially if the person that you're leaving, or maybe they even let you, that there's some kind of fallout, with them.
Mhm.
Meaning that, they start a smear campaign against
Oh, yeah.
you, or, that they start trying to turn people against you because now
Mhm.
it's all of a sudden, team this person or team this person. What do
Mhm.
you think about that?
Um, I think it's unfortunate. I think a lot of time when, I mean, and this is my own opinion, that when people start a smear campaign, they're probably pretty insecure and want to make themselves feel better.
Yeah.
But again, that's just a personal, I don't have any scientific backing on that. It is, I find it unfortunate that people need to tear down other people to build themselves up. It's especially during something so difficult. And I think it shows just a lack of maturity and a lack of, I mean, I don't know why you would do that to somebody. And I know plenty of people who have had that done, had a smear campaign done to them.
Yep.
And it's just so unfortunate because it is such such a big grief, and it's almost bullying.
Yeah,
You know,
definitely.
it's bullying the other person, and it is very disheartening that we can't see that as adults, that's what the other person is doing.
Yeah. I mean, and I tend to, see the victimization, that, oh, I'm the victim, of this, breakup, and I didn't do anything, all of that kind of stuff. I see that a lot, with people that they want you, to be on their side. You have to choose a side, whose side are you going to be on, when somebody breaks up or divorces or, something like that. And so that's kind of hard to see that you don't really have to choose a side, especially if you were friends with both of them. It makes it a little awkward sometimes, but especially you're like, who do I invite to the party,
Right.
Or some kind of celebration or something, that those kind of things, make it awkward, too. But I do. And I know that, I have seen so many. I mean, of course, since I started posting videos about my breakup coaching and everything, I started seeing way more reels and, things that pop up about, like when a narcissist breaks up, they try to, stay in control. They start a smear campaign. They start playing the victim. They do stalking. Like all of these different kind of things. And of course, for those that have watched the podcast before, I had Erica on, and she talked about narcissism. So those are very much related to that. That's clinical narcissism. Versus like what we label as narcissism today.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. I thought Erica did a great job on that podcast.
She did a fantastic.
I think that narcissism is a word that is thrown out a lot. And so is borderline personality disorder. Has grown over the years for husbands to say that, well, that's what's wrong with her, and she's not a good mom. So there's a lot of things that can be thrown out. And I do think that some narcissistic tendencies and borderline tendencies can both be presented during especially a high conflict divorce.
Sure.
Because your body is so dysregulated, and in a high conflict divorce, it's only one person that makes it high conflict. It's not both people. And so when someone is bullying or, messaging the other person incessantly, it can, the cortisol shoots up. You are on edge all the time. You can start having, physical ailments. And it's just, it robs a person of their peace. And there's a part where you just want to say enough's enough.
Yeah.
Like, can you please just move on?
Yep.
And let the other person start their life. And I have found Well, I've seen it's usually the person who asks for the divorce, I have found has started the smear campaign to
Mm.
make themselves feel better.
Oh. Oh.
So
Hmm.
yes. So, I mean, I've seen it both ways.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting. Again, it'd be a really fun study.
Yeah. It would be. And I would love to dive, further into that, and we're actually, at time now, but,
Yep.
I would like to dive into that, a little further because it is interesting. I've had, a pretty, big experience, with
Yes.
a significant other, in divorce,
Mhm.
and, had him, turn all our friends, and
Yes.
the friends that he allowed me to have,
Mhm.
turn all of my friends against me, and even my mom, like
Mhm.
got my mom on his side where she felt bad for him, that
Right.
I was divorcing him, but it was a controlling relationship
Right.
type of situation. And
Right.
anyway, it's just like the psychology behind that. Now he's the one that started the smear campaign,
Yes.
and in my own, experience, I do find that it's to what you said, it was actually the opposite. The person
Mhm.
that feels like, hey, like, why are you leaving me? I'm so
Right.
good for you. And oh, I'm gonna make you the villain, of it. I left you. You didn't leave me, like that.
Right.
I find that indignant, like type of uh emotion, comes out a little bit more, but it is interesting to hear that, that sometimes it's the person that asks for.
Well, and I think it's an insecurity of how they're going to be perceived
Okay.
because they walked away.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
but
interesting. Yeah.
I don't
I
know. Again,
Yeah.
it's I think it's both sides.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Interesting.
just a hard thing all the way around.
It is, it's not easy. And, starting a relationship, I mean, going back to the very beginning of our conversation, starting a relationship, it can be fun. It can be a lot of fun. There are, some sacrifices that some people need to make,
Mhm.
to in the beginning of a relationship if they want to be, in a committed relationship. But
Mhm.
certainly I feel way more sacrifices that are made, once you do part ways, especially if you're so entwined, in each other's lives.
Right.
Yeah. I
Right.
call it the untethering, when you feel
Yep.
untethered, from somebody. And that's really hard for a lot of people. I kind of see it as that you're untethered and now you're floating into space and you don't know if you're going to be rescued.
Right.
you know? So
Well, you got to rescue yourself.
Right, exactly. And I think that's another thing too, is that a lot of people feel like that they have no hope, and that somebody needs to come and rescue them
Right.
rather than them rescue themselves.
Yep.
And that's a lot of times the reason why somebody gets into another relationship, because they think this person
Yep.
is going to heal me. This
Mhm.
person they're coming to save me, and
Mhm.
I think that's the biggest lesson that a lot of people need to learn in life is that nobody's coming to save you. You've got to save yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, good. Well, Amanda, I really, really appreciate you being on the Stress Mess
Oh, you're
podcast.
welcome.
I'm really looking forward to sharing this with everybody, and hopefully giving them some help on helping other people, through divorce, or if they're going through divorce themselves. I hope this helps them too.
Me too. Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Well, good. Well, where can people find you? How can they get coaching from you?
So I have my website, which is resilientlm.com. And then I'm on Instagram and Facebook, and I think I'm getting ready to launch my TikTok. So,
Oh my goodness.
yep. So it's Resilient Life Mentoring is the name of my company.
Nice. All
So
right, good. Well, I will put that in the show notes, and hopefully, people
great.
reach out to you and, are able to get coaching through you. So
Yeah.
thank you so much. I really appreciate you being on
You're
the
so
podcast.
welcome.
Awesome. Well, have a wonderful rest of your day.
You do the same.